Welcome to Breaking Into Tech. I'm excited to do another interview this week, and I'm excited to have Thomas here. So, welcome to the show, Thomas. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hey, Amanda. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to do another interview.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
So, let's learn a little bit about who you are. Tell us your background, if you have any military experience, just who you are.
Okay, well, my name is Thomas. I'm currently here in Olympia, Washington. So right out of high school, I did 5 years in the Navy. It was a hospital corpsman, and then I went to a place called the Evergreen State College, which is always really fun to explain to interviewers. They're like, because it's a school that does not provide a GPA or majors, so I just have a bachelor's technically. So it's up to me to like describe it in detail, which takes about 5 minutes. Um, let's see. During that time, I was, geez, what I do? Okay, so I was a homeless vet counselor with the VA for a little bit, and then I worked with the employee security department for the state of Washington. And then at the same time too, I was trying to pursue creative writing and filmmaking in school. So I have about five short films under my belt, three of which are experimental nonsense, one of which is, I'm going to say, quite good, and the other one, which is the worst one easily, but it means the most to me. I made a movie called A Pizza My Heart, which is about a pizza guy, and if you don't tip him, he kills the customers and then serves them to his next customers. Um, and then after that, um, let's see. So while I was doing all right, so we were prepping for our next film. It was going to be like a big production, bigger production, I should say. Then COVID came, and then it was already hard enough. It's really hard to like find people and have them agree. So I just got tired of it. Then COVID came, and then completely wiped away any sort of motivation I had there. And then they also got laid off from one of the jobs I had. So that sucked. So I got really mad. And this was around 2019. I was really angry. So I was looking at Sabio actually in 2019. And, I did what everyone else did. I didn't do it. So instead, I moved to Turkey for 2 years. Um, and I was an English teacher there. And now I'm where I'm at now.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a wide variety of experience. You served in the Navy as corpsman, which is the equivalent of a medic if you're not Navy speaker. and then and then you worked on a bunch of different projects, and you were working on film, and like COVID really messed you up. But before that, you were kind of considering Sabio anyways, but then you didn't do it, and now you are. So, what led you to first start looking into Sabio the time that you didn't do it? Like, why did you start looking into Sabio's program?
I was looking at several boot camps actually. Sabio was the one I looked at the most. Now, to be perfectly honest, it was a very like cold way of like looking at it, and I think naturally, I'm naturally like skeptical. Now that I find is a double-edged sword, and you have to be careful. I find with skepticism because when you think of yourself as a skeptical person, I don't really think like that anymore, but you tend to, I think, you have this bias towards trying to find things that are like negative, right? Because it's like, oh, if it's negative, it must be truthful, right? And that can be true to an extent, but it doesn't exactly paint the whole picture for you, and that can be really difficult. So when I was looking at Sabio, I was just like, looking up online, and there's a bunch of things that people say online, right, in regards to anything, right? So yeah, eventually I let the negative comments went out, and in another like really wise move of mine, I actually ended up talking to another boot camp. I won't say who they are. I'm sure they're good, but like I called them. I didn't even do an info session or a phone call with Sabio. Like in 2019 or when I joined. I was just like, I emailed them like, let me do this. But well, I talked to them and they gave me this like pitch, like they focused on like the community aspect. They're like, we're like a family here, like we really care about one another here. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but I'm looking to, um, I think people want to like naturally come to that themselves, right? Like, don't tell me like I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna make all these like great friends, and like these will be my like tech brothers and sisters, comrades, if you will. And I'm just like, it just turned me off because sentimentality is not, I think, the way to pull me in particular. I just got turned off by it. I was like, ew, ick, like so um, yeah, and then, so when I was in Turkey, right, which is where I did Sabio. So, like, while I was living in Turkey, that's when I did Sabio. So, like, of course, like the time zones were different. And the reason I chose to do Sabio at that point was really because, um, so when COVID hit me in Washington, right, in 2019, I was just fortunate enough to just, get laid off. The second time, this time, like, because it was a preschool teacher and they didn't want to close the school down and we had to be there. And it makes sense. You don't want to do Zoom classes with like 5 to 6 year olds, right? It's already hard enough getting like their attention. Now I really like that job, but I got COVID there. I actually got COVID, and by law you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, which is what I did. And then my boss comes and says like, oh, we're not paying you for the month. It's like, why? He's like, you didn't work for 2 months or 2 weeks. And I was like, yeah, I had COVID. She was like, yeah, but you still didn't work 2 weeks. So without thinking about it, I just quit. That was my response. Like, all right, I quit. Like, I'm not coming back. I'm not putting in a 2 weeks notice. I just quit. Um, yeah, because like if they're gonna like do me like that, like last second, right at the end of the 2 week period, be like, we're not paying you for a month, and it's like, okay, well, I quit. I mean, I figured it's fair. So, so it was like that. That was like, okay, you know what? Like, clearly, I need some sort of like new skill set. So, I went with Sabio just because that was the one I had done the most research on and the one I felt the most comfortable with. And I knew that the time zone thing was going to be an obstacle, but like, I didn't really care. I really felt like I had no other choice. It was like a real Hail Mary. It really felt like the end of days when I was looking into it.
So how did you overcome that time zone? Because that, I mean, days are really long, and then
Hmm.
if you're not in the United States, then it's even
Hmm.
longer. So how did you
Yeah.
overcome that?
Okay. So basically, like I had found another job, right, while I was in Turkey, which was very lucky, right? It was very, very lucky. It was an online thing too, so I didn't have to leave. So that was like my first step. So I had like this 3 step plan to be able to pull it off, and it all came together within 2 months. So step one was like, okay, find a new line of work because I can't pay. I don't have a job, so I have to pay for like this. Okay, I found an online thing. Was the pay great? No, but it gave me exactly what I needed. So the pay was about $300 US a month, right? Which is fine if you were living where I was. So that was the first step. I got that down. The second step was to yeah, it was to get the scheduling so that way it could be lined up because I was just basically like, okay, like I will, make sure that the job that I'm doing will actually give me the hours to do this. So the way that it ended up being was on weekends I would do a lot of the work, but from Monday through Friday I was essentially working from like 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then Sabio comes and I'm doing Sabio 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So yeah, so that's what I was dealing with. Now I didn't really have like a plan for that. I didn't like have like a nutrition plan or anything like that. It was basically just sheer force of will, basically. Um, I remember like in stand-ups, like I would complain about how tired I was, and like yeah, I chose to do it. Yeah, I did it, but I still like to complain, so that's what I did. And the third step was Actually, Elden Ring came out around the time I was supposed to start. I was like, let's push the start date back by 2 months. I'm not going to focus on anything if Elden Ring's out and I haven't beaten it yet. So I was able to do that.
That's awesome. So you were
hmm
able to adjust your work schedule that was virtual or
Yeah.
remote, and then you were able to in that and then go into your work day of working at Sabio and then
hmm
I guess sleep for a little bit and then
Yeah.
do it all over again.
Yeah.
That must have been
Basically.
tough.
Yeah, I guess it was. It didn't feel tough during it. It just felt like something I had to do, you know. Like towards the end there, like it felt like I was looking at like I don't know if I would go outside or something, right? I might see like a building and like it looked like I don't know, it looked like JavaScript all over the building. I was like trying to, yeah, I felt like it was going insane. So yeah, but it was only temporary. So,
Yeah. And you
hmm
had a goal at mind and you could see the finish line, so you just did what you had to do to get through it.
yeah, exactly.
So
Like it.
let's talk. Oh, sorry. Let's talk a little bit
No,
about
no.
your time at Sabio. What
hmm
did you build with your cohort? Everyone does a project. What was your project?
Okay, so it's been a while. All right, so I was on two projects. I was on one of them for a little bit. Didn't do much there. It was mostly debugging stuff and looking at other things. And then this one I was called Aquifer F E or PE? I can't remember. Oh boy, that's gonna make me. I don't remember the last two letters.
That's
Basically,
all
it
right.
was like it was a job board for civil engineers, mechanical engineers, I believe, right? So it was basically like a way in which it's like a niche job board. Basically, it was a way to get people in that field some contracting opportunities. And my feature on it was actually being able to add those particular opportunities. And the way I did it was with a React form wizard. So it was like a big React form, um, lots of stuff on it and then lots of stuff to put in it, which was a lot of fun. I like doing it. Yeah, no, that was cool. I got to do that. I'm sure the whoever took over the project completely was like, man, this sucks. Like I need to fix this. So, but like I thought it was I thought for like a first draft sort of thing, it was pretty cool. If I do say so myself.
Yeah, I love that you guys get the freedom in the coding
hmm
class to through your
hmm
cohort to build projects hands-on. And like, yeah, maybe it's not the way that the final product ends up, but it like
hmm
you can try something and think outside the box and maybe people were like, "Oh, this was a really good idea," and they just made some tweaks here and there. But
hmm
I think that's really cool that you guys get to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was definitely really cool. It definitely gave me a lot to talk about outside of Sabio.
So let's talk about graduating. So after you graduated or near the end, you start looking for a job. Were you able to
hmm
find a job?
Sure did. Okay, so like when you graduate Sabio, it was weird because one day like you're in the thick of it, right? It's all you're doing, and then they just let you go. That's it. It's like you're done. And I had been really busy with the keyboard and the typing and the yelling and the pillows. So right after Sabio, I was like, well, that is this it? Like, are we really done? And they're like, yeah, man, like that's it. I was like, huh. Which was, I think like I was when you think of it in the big picture stuff, it makes sense. But like when it's little like what I call little big moments, little human moments of like that that you don't expect, right? So for me, it was like, oh, that's it, you're done. Like you did your thing and you're done. I'm like, okay. So right after that, I built a little CRUD app using Vue this time. So that's what I did after that. And after that, I was able to sleep. So But yeah, the job hunt. So that mine was slightly different, I think, to most people, just because I'm in Turkey still at this point. Okay, so basically, I felt like I had to be a little bit more creative in how I was looking for jobs, right? Like I'd done the Sabio thing of like applying everywhere, and there's lots of different advice to get. I think you look anywhere for like getting a job in tech, just stick with if you go to Sabio, or if this is what the audience might be, prospective Sabio, like potential like students, right? Just stick with what Sabio says. You'll find a lot of people say a lot of different things. Just stick with what Sabio says, right? Because Sabio's method is basically the net is going to be really wide, and the mesh too is also going to be like is going to be fine as well. Okay, so just stick with it. Okay, like um, okay, but basically I had to be a little different, right? So I was looking at different job boards. I was looking at different like international stuff because that was my main appeal, right? Now, despite like all the stuff that had been going on in Turkey, like making 300, maybe 500 bucks a month, um, I still really valued and enjoyed my time there. And I think about that place every day. Um, so I was looking at different job boards. I was still doing like the LinkedIn stuff. I was doing I actually had an English student who was on his second startup, right? And we were talking about me working for him. So that was another way. I was talking to some companies in the UK. I was really looking at international because that's like what I really love is being out somewhere that's like new and exciting to me, right? Like I try to travel as much as I can. I try to see as much of the world as I can. That's the other reason why jumped into Sabio. I felt like that was a good way to find myself out into the world and be there in a more long-term capacity. Um, so yeah, I applied to 2,500 jobs, I think, by week three after Sabio. Okay. Um, and yeah, it was a lot of application, a lot of interviews, a lot of saltiness, a lot of cynicism. That I think was the hardest period because I was just like, man, I'm all the way out here. Like, am I actually going to be able to do it? Um, so I think that's how that went. The way I got this one actually was through a referral. So I'm working actually with someone else in my cohort who got the same position that I do. We have the same title, and we're at the same company, we're on the same team together. He referred me, and it happened very quickly after that. I was talking to a couple of other companies. Best offer, which was overseas again in Turkey, was 3,000 a month, which would have been really good over there. But this one was significantly higher, and this was at a like a bigger company. So I was like, okay, I think this might be the best way to start, even though like I'm gonna feel like a little sad about being here rather than over there. But I try not to think about too much of like what could have been or anything like that. I'm just at where I'm at now. I'm gonna do the best with what I can.
Yeah. So it sounds like you did a lot of work and you sent out tons of applications, you did interviews, and then you were
Hmm.
kind of in like the final stages of getting a job. And one of the members of your cohort referred you for a job, and it was the right fit, the right money, the right place to
Hmm.
be. And so you came back to the US.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did. Yeah. So well, it happened very. I was surprised with how quick it was. Usually you hear about these things and they're like, oh, they took forever to get me back. So from like the day I applied to the day they sent me the offer letter was in the span of 6 days. I was still in Turkey, so I was just like, okay, time to fly back, like right away. So.
Wow. Yeah.
Hmm.
That is really fast. I've heard
Hmm.
that like when you get referred, sometimes it can be like
Hmm.
super quick. I mean, sometimes it can take a long time, but when you get that like person who's in the company who's referring you, it can like help to bypass some of the parts that make it so your application can get stuck in different places. Yeah. So Do you have any advice or anything you would tell yourself if you could go back before you started applying for jobs?
No, actually, I feel like I carried it out in a way that one, I don't like to think about, oh, I wish I could have like done this, right? Because I've come to terms with that. I'm making this up as I'm going along, and that there's always something of value, something to appreciate on a level uh, every day. Like Turkey, right? Like, I got COVID there. I got screwed over with pay and all that sort of stuff, but I still really love it. I still think of it fondly. I have really good friends that I still talk to every day. Um, but as far as like how I carried out with like, the interviews and sort of like hard advice, I still wouldn't have anything for myself. That's not to say like, oh yeah, I did it correctly, like 100% of the way. What I really liked was, I don't know what it was. Like, I used to be like really, really nervous when it came to stuff like that. Now I don't say like, there's still that human thing of like, oh, am I gonna like impress these things? But I had so many of them. It was just like, okay, like I know, like I would like have these like tactics, if you will, right? These ways of like speaking about myself, right? And like I had enough interviews to where I could see like what worked and what didn't work, and it was very quick because I was like having 3, 4 interviews a day or something, right? So if there was like something that I saw that or something I said and I'm like, oh, that didn't feel good coming out of my mouth, like, then I would immediately just change it. I would be able to refine it over like really quickly. So I think like the most obvious thing would be like say, oh, you should have done Sabio in 2019. It's like, yeah, I could have, but then like I wouldn't have had Turkey for those 2 years. And I love Turkey. So I never dreamed in a million years I was going to ever go there. By the way, it wasn't like I had this lifelong fascination with it. I just went. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, so no, I wouldn't get into like a time machine or give myself any advice. I think I did, I obviously went about it in a very roundabout, difficult way, but I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about how while you were doing the interviews, you got more comfortable and then you were
Hmm.
able to take the things that landed well and to
Hmm.
use them again, or things that landed flat, you improved them or tweaked them.
Hmm.
I think that's really good advice when it comes to doing an interview is to always be thinking like, how can I answer this question better? What can I take from this past interview and use it for the
Hmm.
next one? I think that's really great. What
Yep,
advice
definitely.
what advice would you give someone who is considering a career in software engineering?
Um, let's see. Okay, so one, I think you should. One, I think you should like at least try it. Like a free course or something. Maybe this is where I plug in. Oh, Sabio's free pre-work. Try that. No, but really, try it. Like if you are fascinated, if you are curious by the process, you will go far. I think if you are doing it just for money, and I don't think that's a bad thing inherently. I mean, I really don't. Some people like are like, don't do things for the money. It's like, yeah, but it's a job. Like anyway, um, you'll probably get burned out, but I think a lot of people face burnout in any job that they don't like working. Um, so I would say just try it. And if you are curious, if you don't understand, if you're comfortable, if you're fascinated by the process, if you do one thing and you're confused by it, but you still want to do more of it, you might be in the right place, I would say.
Yeah.
It's just like filmmaking. Like if you go through the process of making one, even a short film, and it's a big giant pain, especially when we're working with multiple people, and it's a big pain, and you're like, okay, that do making that sucked, but I want to do another one. Okay, you're probably in the right place. Um, Now, if you're, if you, so that's, so find out if it's something you want to do, basically, right? I don't think there are any magic tricks or like any secrets. Um, just see if you like innately, like, does the idea of it fascinate you in any way? Then go for it. Try it out. Um, don't spend too much time figuring it out though. Sometimes it's like ripping off a band-aid. Just go for it. especially if
Just
you're
take
like me,
that
who,
leap.
yeah, exactly, right? Kierkegaard's leap into faith. So, yeah, just try it. Okay, like what do you have to lose by trying it? You know, so as far as like trying out your interest, obviously when you put money down for a boot camp, more is on the line, of course, but just try it. Okay, I would say see if you like it first. And the second thing is to be comfortable with a certain degree of uncertainty. All right, you're not going to know everything. I know there's a lot of people who, I mean, I'm not going to like, there's a few people who have like anxiety, things like that, like insecurities about themselves, about their like intelligence. But the great thing about like like something like this, which I would view as a trade versus like the arts, right, is that, with this, like there's at least a solution that you can find. And tons of people do it. So really, like, and they all face the same struggles as you will, and that's perfectly okay. Just step up, just run into that, just slam your head into that brick wall over and over again. Eventually, you will learn to love it, or tolerate it, I should say, not love it. Okay, like it's okay. It'll be okay. That's my
Awesome.
that's my advice to people.
I think that's great advice. Try it out and then like keep working at it. You'll figure it out.
Mhm.
So the last question I want to ask is where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years and would you ever consider starting your own tech startup?
Okay, this is interesting question. I actually thought about this one the most, and this will probably sound the most incoherent. I don't know where I will be in 2 to 5 years because I have lots of other interests, and there's a lot of things you can learn, of course, in software engineering, cloud, machine learning, AI. If you're Web3, if you're one of those. And I don't know if I should say this, but if you are, don't talk to me. But I have no clue really. I don't like that was actually one of the questions I had to work on the most in interviews. Where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years? I came up with a solution that I think was pretty good, but so but anyway, I don't know. I would as far as like tech startup, I don't know. That's really it. And that might sound like really like unfocused and bad planning to the audience, and to that I would say you're exactly right. It is. So,
I don't think it's bad to not really know
mhm,
where you're gonna go. I mean, you
mhm,
could have like a general idea, but like
mhm,
just hearing your background, you've done a lot of different things, you've had a lot of different experiences, and sometimes you can take something like software engineering and use it in a way in the future that right now you can't see the correlation. Like my background's civil engineering and now I host
mhm,
podcasts and do interviews, which it doesn't really make sense, but there's a story that goes with it. And I think that there's a lot that you could do
mhm,
and the future is changing in ways that we don't understand. So
mhm.
I that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh no, I don't know. I don't, I was just making noise.
Thank you so much for being a guest and taking time out of your day to talk about your experience with Sabio. I really appreciate you being on the show.
All right. Thank you for having me. It was fun.